Hello, welcome to more of me struggling to learn Haskell, struggling to stay Haskell, to learn Haskell. Um, I have a new computer since last week. I think everything is set up, but there's a chance of problems ahead. So hopefully everything goes smoothly. We'll just focus on the Haskell writing. Worst case is I spend an hour trying to reconfigure things, sharing it with you. But let's hope for the best. On the plus side, it is much faster. So hopefully when I'm compiling stuff, it should be a little bit quicker. We'll see how that goes. Plan for today is to, I guess, carry on where I finished last week, which was I have all of the database code in place now. So I have a servant app. It's got the endpoints where you can create and list both environments and bookings against those environments. And everything is working using persistent to store stuff in Postgres. But the code is a bit of a mess. It's just a kind of a collection of the previous code where it wasn't in Postgres and me not knowing what I'm doing. And it's just kind of a spaghetti mess of code all over the place. So at the end of last week, I started to try to refactor that to pull all of the code relating to the environment into one place. And I'll do the same. So I'll continue with that and get it working, and then try and pull the code to do with bookings into one place as well. So I end up with code grouped by kind of domain function rather than by the type of object it is or the type of thing it is. So that's the plan. There's going to be a lot of type errors and moving code around, but it'll be a good chance to see how good Haskell really is for this refactoring stuff, where it should be quite easy to make. Well, it should be easy to know that the change I've made has worked because the type should be guiding me. So that's the plan. Let's take a look at some of the code. So this nonsense is where I left off last week. I had a previous function for creating an environment, and I'm replacing it with this one, which is much shorter and easier to. I think it's easier to read. We'll see. But there are some other changes I made along the way. So, for example, when you're passing in the data that's used to create an environment, I'm now using a different record for that, which only contains information that is specified when you're creating it. Previously, I had this idea of the, let's see if I can still find it, not the DAO. Yeah, I think previously I had a record where it contained all the information, including stuff that you weren't passing in, which means that this became like maybe ID, even though environment always has an ID. When you're creating it, you don't specify it. So I had to make it a maybe type. In the refactor, I'm not doing that, right? I'm creating a different record, which contains just the fields that are specified. I call it create environment, and actually, I don't really like the way it looks now because you have this create environment name, and create environment sounds like an action that you're doing, and it matches the function name, which is a bit confusing as well. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is just rename this to new environment. I'll rename all instances of it. And I'll rename the accessor method as well, or the field name. Oops, I'll rename it over here. Because I think that reads a bit better. I just say it, sorry, stuff jumped around, so I guess I have a different formatter installed here than I did when I committed this on a different machine. Anyway, yeah, so we pass in the new environment, or the new environment information, and it runs under this kind of mess of things. So it's returning an environment, and the environment it's returning is the one that's defined up here in the definition that I'm given to persistent that gets used to create the record, or in fact, it gets used to create the table in Postgres. So that's what gets returned from here. And then everything runs under appm and then m, and m I've defined as being something that's just it implements monad.io. And the reason for that is because I want to call lift.io, so I need this inner M to provide functionality for lift.io. And we lift IO because when we run the database connection, that's an IO operation, so we need to be able to run it under IO. What am I doing here? Oh, I put it in the database and I get the ID back, and then I go and load all the data back out of the database again. I guess it's not strictly necessary, but it's fine. I'm not really going to care about optimizing this and getting rid of an extra query. Okay, appm. Where does this come from now? Am I pulling this in? Yes, so I created a new file called application, put appm into there. Oops. No. So application just contains this definition. So we got app config, which is a record with a single field in it called dbcon. Which maybe we call dbpool actually. I'll rename it later actually. I'll not rename it now because I've got so many other errors because I'm in mid refactor that I think that would be problematic. But then I just defined this type appm as being reader app config m. Right. So in theory, I can take this create environment and use it. If I go to main.hs, so I'm putting an app config and appm from here. I have this environment type, this environment endpoint to create environment. So we're saying we require an environment and we return maybe an environment. Now the environment here is the one that comes out of the DAO. This is old code. So what I'm going to do to force me to fix that? No, let's do excluding. Is it excluding hiding? Is what I'm looking for? Yeah, it's hiding. Okay, we're just going to hide environment from here. So now all the places where I used environment before will now show up as being broken. I'll need to go through and fix them one by one. This is going to be interesting because there's quite a lot of them. This is the only one I was really interested in fixing, so maybe I'll fix this and then put it back to where it was so we can do them one by one. So we're not here, when we capture the body, we're not going to pass in an environment in the body. We're going to pass in this thing called new environment, which comes from environment file. Can it find that for me? It can't find it because I'm not exporting it. So up here, let's export that so we can use it. So we will also export new environment. Don't think we're actually going to call a constructor, so I don't think we need to export everything from it. I think we just need to reference it as a type. So in theory, I can pull in from there. Cool. Okay. So now we take. That's not cool. Let's undo that. I actually want to change it to new environment. And that's going to pull in. Okay, cool. So the body we pass in is something of type new environment. And then when we create it, we need to return something of type maybe environment. And again, that's going to come from the environment module. Okay. Let me just say import qualified DAO as DAO. What's the thing? Why not import? Ah, cool. So I'm re-importing that so I can get back to this DAO environment. So I can make these changes one by one, so endpoint by endpoint, I guess. But what I'm hoping this has done is created an error here. But it has not. Why has it not done that? Is that because I have so many other errors? No, it's hidden away down here. Ah, different error. Okay, so app config, it's saying not in scope data constructor app config. So I'll import that. And then I can't set dbcon. So what I really want to do is, oh, I have exported everything from that config. Okay, cool. So I should be able to say app config dot. So we'll pull in all the constructor and fields from app config. Okay, cool. Slightly better. So now we have the more interesting type error. Okay, so the way that appm used to be defined, I think, was something like type appm is reader t app config and handler. So that's what it used to be. So you could literally replace appm here with reader t app config handler. Actually, yeah, I think that's the way it was. The way it's now defined is it takes another monad or any other type, but it should be monad here, and it defines it as reader t app config m. Now, when you replace this appm literally with this definition, you have a problem because you need to specify the m. So in theory, I should be able to say appm handler a. Okay, so I am specializing the m, or providing the m in this case, but I'm specializing it to say it is of type handler. And handler will support lift.io. I'm pretty sure it does anyway. Here again, I need to provide the type, so I can say handler. However, I need to be careful here. So this complex type is being passed to server T. It's not an extra argument at the end of server T. It's these two things together form the argument, or from the type that's being passed to server T. Okay, cool. So we should have a lot more errors now. We do. Okay, so some of these are easy-ish fixes. This is annoying. So there'll be a lot of writing handler in for all of these things. Is that a good idea, or should I just create a type for it? Because what I could do is just say something like type. Let's put this at the beginning of the file. I can say type app is appm handler. And then I can change these into apps. So again, it's just literally replacing app with whatever I told it the type was equal to. Okay, and then here I can just replace this with app as well and get rid of brackets. And down here, I can do that as well. Okay, cool. So we've listed these functions for handling the endpoints that we created, and they go in the same order. So we defined create environment as second, the second endpoint in our list of routes for the API. Routes, should learn to say that. But we specified the create environment functions in this main file as being the handler for the second route. When we set the routes up, we said it takes something of type new environment and returns something of type maybe environment. But if we look at create here, it takes something of type environment and returns something of type maybe environment. And that's not quite, that doesn't match, right? It needs to be new environment. However, I don't really want to fix it here. I want to use the one that I defined in the environment file. So if I go back to environment, I'm just going to export create environment. Okay, so it's this thing, and this thing has got the type new environment to app_mm maybe environment. So as long as handler fits mono.io, then we should just be able to use this. I think. I'm going to find out. So here, just create environment. It adds a list of imports. And interestingly, that type error has gone away, so it looks like it worked. Yeah, we're looking good, I think. So now the remaining errors in here are because I need to qualify this everywhere. Okay, where have I got? I've used environment all over the place. This is going to be a little bit of a painful exercise. There might be a lesson here on how to refactor stuff that I'm learning as I go. This is a little bit of a painful way of doing it. So using another type with the same name, it is pretty interesting. Or maybe actually the original problem is mixing this qualified import of DAO environment with the unqualified import. Although I'm repeating it because I'm just doing another unqualified import, so we'll see. Okay, we have 6 errors left. I think these are all in the DB file. Let's just jump to one of them and see. So this create environment I can get rid of because I replaced it. Sorry, wait, I can get rid of all of it. There's a lot of code that was sort of extracting the environment information and then converting it into something else. We don't need any of that anymore. We just use the right types to start with. And then we have 1 error left. That was pretty good. And create environment is not in scope. So let's get rid of that. I think this might unleash more errors. Yes. Okay, cool. So this kind of makes sense, I think. So this endpoint for getting environments, it's relying on, well, this error is relying on a function that was created when I set up the type in persistent. But because I've moved that into another file, the old code does not work anymore. It hasn't access to it. I could export it and then import it here, but I don't want to do that, I don't think. What I might just do is this for now. Just comment that out. Oops. Okay. So that's my warning. We've got 1 error left until the next errors. This end with status. Come out for a second, and we'll just put something in here. undefined. Okay, I now have 0 errors and 1 warning, and the warning is my use of undefined up here. Okay. So what I want to do now is see if it works. So let's say go build. What am I doing? What language am I using? Like build. So you get a warning about undefined, which is good. But it seems to have built it. So I can say stack run. I think I already started Postgres, so this should run. And then bring up another terminal, and I copied the curl commands earlier in the week, so they're available somewhere in my history, I think. Yes, so I can get back a list of environments. Now this is hitting the old code. That's why the name is coming through as undefined, but you can see that environment 1 is available. Well, it's not really available, that's just it might be available, I can't remember if that works or not. But I should also actually be able to do I should be able to post. So it's something like curl minus x post. Minus d. Damn it. Minus d. Minus data. That's how I did it. Okay. I've copied across stuff for creating a booking. Other copies across for creating an environment. I think I must have done because I got some data. There we go. Okay. So here we had something which creates an environment called staging. I think I want one called tests. I'll create one called dev, the dev environment. Aha. So it doesn't work. Key new environment name not found. Oh, now that's interesting. Okay, so I don't know if it's interesting. It's interesting to me. Is all that matters in this. Okay, so the field is called new environment name. So this is me trying to work with Haskell. I can't have multiple functions with the same name, and each field in a record is given a function where the name of that function is derived from the name of the field. So if I create a field here called name, then it creates a function called name, and then if I create another field here called name, and it was actually called name, we would end up with 2 functions called name, and the code wouldn't compile. So I'm calling it new environment name. At some point, I want to upgrade to Haskell 9.2.2, I think it is, latest version of Haskell 9, because it's got the record dot syntax, which makes it look like other languages, modern languages. It makes it look more like an O language, and it would let me do stuff like if I had an environment here, imagine I had an environment called env, I could say env.name, and then you don't get clashes on the function names. So that's new in very new Haskell, but I don't have that yet. And it's going to take me a while to upgrade everything. I don't want to pass in new environment name in the JSON payload when I'm creating something. I want to pass in name. So what we could do is write our own instance of from JSON. Yeah, our own instance of from JSON. I don't know if we need the 2JSON instance actually. I'll see later if I can delete that. But I've done this before. I did this in the DAO, and I want to just copy the code. It's this kind of stuff. In fact, let me just copy this verbatim and fix it. So parse JSON will just pull that in. object, we'll just pull it in. That's the thing that comes from ASIN. Actually, okay, we're not creating a DAO environment, we're creating a new environment. And the only field to that is this one. And add that to import as well. Okay, so we're taking object V, we're pulling a field called name out of it, and we're passing it as an argument to the constructor for new environment. So it'll be set as the first field, basically. And if we get empty JSON, we return nothing, basically. So I'm hoping that that will allow me to call the create endpoint with the JSON payload that contains name rather than new environment name. Let's see if that works. So go back here and we will recompile it. Needs to stack run, it should rebuild it. When we're undefined, and there we go, we're running. It's definitely quicker than it was before. And almost no load on my CPU, that's nice. Okay, so I'm going to try this again. I'm going to do the same request, but I'm going to set name dev and hope it works this time. And there we go, we created an environment with the name of dev. So if I go back to listing the environments, there should be 3 of them. That looks like 2 of them. Maybe there's only 1 before. I can't remember. I thought we were. Oh, I listed before, so there was only 1 environment, and now there were 2 of them. That's cool, but you can't see what they are at the moment because the name is undefined. Okay. Oops. So what I'd like to do, one thing I want to see is kind of get rid of that, and it looks like I can. No errors, so I'm guessing it's fine. There's no point where I'm, as far as I'm aware, there's no point where I'm converting this record back to JSON to return via servant to the caller. So I think I only need to be able to go from the JSON payload into one of these objects. Okay, create environment. The next one to do is maybe list environments. I'm going to do a basic version list environments without the status because I need bookings for that. So I'm going to wait until I've built bookings before I do the more complex thing. Okay, so back in main. So it's called list environments in the database, which as far as I'm aware should be kind of simple. Can I jump to it? Oh, I can't. Cool. So we just do select list, and then this mapm was the one that was doing the second query to find out whether or not. Oh, it's down here. It's doing the second query to find out whether or not it is booked. This will be interesting to see whether or not my refactoring works in principle, because it means that to show the environment, I need to get the bookings. That could be okay because I can just pull the bookings code in, but I couldn't then import the environment stuff into bookings as well because you get a circular dependency. So hopefully that's not the case, but we'll find out. We'll see what happens. Okay. So we can do this to start with. So we're not going to be given a new environment, but we're not going to be given any arguments. And we are not going to return maybe environment. We're actually going to return a list of environments. I don't know what I just did. Keys do magic things. Oh, I jumped to location rather than inserting a thing, inserting a bracket. Okay. It doesn't take any arguments. So the pull, we can pull out of this append is a reader with the config inside it, so there's a reader with the config inside it, so we can ask it for the database connection that's in the config. Right. So this con is actually a pool, and this I'm not going to do yet. So rather than storing it, I'll store it in M's because I'm going to use it in a second. It's an inefficient way of writing this, but I'm going to lift IO, oops, that thing. And then I'm going to just say pure M's for now. It's going to get upset because I don't need to assign it to here and then return pure. I could just do, it's saying redundant pure fine, but you could write that, you could make this very short. But I won't. So what I want to do is I'll fix select list for a second. Just import that. Okay. So we are entity environment rather than environment. So I will just change this to say entity. And now, apart from the warning of this stupidness, I think that should be working. Maybe I'll just write this a simpler way. So I think you can say asks dbcon. No, it's the wrong argument. I was thinking I could say something like ask dbcon and then pass it into run SQL pool, but actually there's two problems with this. One is that there's only one problem with this. Because you can partially apply this function. So then pool becomes the result of calling asks dbcon. So it should be the last argument to run db pool. Or run SQL pool, but run SQL pool does not run under the append monad, it runs under our monad, so you still need to lift this. I don't know how to do that, so I'm not even going to try. Let's just put this back to where it was. But I will just say pure here. Pure lift IO. Oh, what was its reduction in this? Oh, you don't say pure. Okay. Interesting. Okay. So this is an implementation of list environments, which should get back the environment and return it. So you should be getting the name, basically. And the ID as well, actually, because the entity includes the ID. So I'm going to export this. Okay. And then if I jump back to main, I should be able to get rid of this. And this listing is not going to be listed dot environment now, it's going to be just environment. And I should have a type error, it's probably going to be at the end of my file. No, even better. So that's not in scope. So we'll just add it list from listed import from environment. Okay, and now it's saying can't match entity environment with environment. So I've told it in the routes that we return list of environment. That's not true. We return list of entity environment. And now we have no type errors. So in theory, let's get rid of that. In theory, I can recompile it and rerun it. And then if I ask it to list environments, it's now my new code. And it's dropped the emp status stuff, but it's got the name and the ID, which are coming out of Postgres, but they're coming via the new code I just wrote. Okay, so if I go back to the DB file, I'm kind of interested in this env with status thing. So what I want to do is return a different record structure, which got the ID, the status, which we do by looking up all of the bookings, basically, and the name, which just comes from the record. What I think I want to do is maybe before I do this one, I might look at getting back a single record, a single booking. So maybe just try and do this one. It might be slightly simpler. We shall see though. Okay. So to do this, to do the get environments, I need some of all of this in this code. Okay, so let me grab this, copy and paste it into environment. So we can say get environments. I am unable to copy and paste. I copied the wrong code. Try it again. Still the wrong code. I'm just selecting the wrong code. Where is the thing to get a single environment? That looks like a single environment to me, because you're given an ID. You say get from the ID that was passed in. It's just a weird name. Get environment. Okay, we're going to take an ID. I'm just going to say it takes an int64 for now. And we return maybe an environment. Although this might end up being maybe an entity environment, I'm not quite sure. Okay, we don't take the connection pool. And we don't run under IO. We run under appmm. We need to specify that as being IOM. So take an int64 and we'll run under appm and maybe environment. Okay. So we don't have two arguments here, we just have one, which is the ID. We won't be undefined. Okay, do. So first of all, pool, as always, comes from asks dbcon. Right, maybe the environment comes from lift.io of this. I should be able to drop it from integral because I'm the right type. Okay, so we possibly got an environment, and then we can do this stuff and then just fix it, I guess. So we got here case environment of, so if we have an environment, then we return just an environment. Let's just return it for now. So we won't worry about the availability stuff for a second, and we'll say just m. Okay, I need to import SQL key. Okay, so what this should do is go to the database, get the environment back. If we have an environment, we just return it. Otherwise, we'll return nothing. Can I just say pure that and then ditch these ones? And then that. Just save me repeating the pure everywhere. So I think that should work. We will export that as well. So get environment. Go back to main, and then we need to change our types up here. So this is going to be an int64. I might add that behind the type later, and then it's going to return ooh, interesting. Okay, so in handler previously, when we say get environment, we get it back here, but as a maybe environment, and then we have this throw error. So maybe I can move this into the environment as well. It doesn't feel super because it's moving. The environment file now has all the code to the environment, and it's also getting some code to do with HTTP handling. Maybe I kind of do want this wrapper. I don't know. Not totally sure. Let me, I can delete this right because I have another example of through error later. I can copy if I need to. Delete that. Okay, so get environment, I'm going to import from here. And can we try maybe environment with environment? So up here I could just say maybe environment. Need to bracket that. Let me just see what happens when we do this. I'm sure I saw this before and I've forgotten what the output is when you don't throw the exception. You might just get nothing back, which is possibly okay. Jumping back to here. So I can get the environments back and I can get environment 1, staging, delete the S, whoops, I'll replace it with a V. So this is 200 OK and staging, and then we get environment 2, it should be 200 OK and dev. If I get 3 or 9, I get null. Okay, it's not great. 200 OK and null doesn't feel quite right to me. It should be a 404. So can I fix that without introducing without moving servant-related code into the environment stuff. I think that's my aim. And one obvious way is to create a wrapper function for this. But I wonder if we can make it like a generic sort of get or 404, something like that, which has got type. Now what's it going to do? It's going to take an int64, and it's also going to take, it needs to take a function which goes from int64 to up a, and it's going to return a function which runs under up a, I think. So we can say get or 404 ID the handler. So can we run our handler? And we should get a sort of some kind of value coming back from that. And that's going to take an ID. Sorry, that's what I think that's what I want. So we get a handler. We call the handler. And then we can say case h of, sorry, this is not going to return a, it's going to return a maybe a. Right. And not case 8, case x of. Now we got, if it's just some value, then we just return that value. And then nothing is, oops, throw 404. We don't know what we're finding. You say something about resource. We don't know what the idea is. And just make this simpler, something like resource not found. Something like that. Okay. I'm sure there's a better way of doing this, but it doesn't work. So run reader T wants something of type. But okay, maybe I do want the ID split out here, so ID in that. No, I don't think that is what I want. What would happen if I made this non-generic? Let's make it non-generic and then work back. So we could say get environment die or error. Okay, this is just going to simply be this thing. And this is okay, the environment, whatever. x86 ID, and then what can we do here? So we can say x is get environment. Okay, so we'll call the underlying thing which returns the maybe type. We're not going to return app A, we're going to return app environment. And what's this problem here? We use type variable A0 as we use JSON code. So I wonder why this doesn't throw the same error. Is it because of overloaded strings? It is, that's annoying. Okay, so down here I could say get environment or error. Okay, and if I go back up to the routes again, I can say this just returns environment. There's no maybe about it. It returns environment or return a 404. Okay, so does that work? Do the right thing. Okay, so you get an idea doesn't exist, you get 404 and resource not found. And here we can say get 2 and it finds it for us. Okay. So I'm going to see if I can make this more generic later, I think. Because I'm not quite sure what the answer is at this point. Let's have a look though at the bookings now. No, actually, let me finish moving environment stuff over. I've moved all the environment stuff over. Okay, that's cool. What have we got in the environment that's commented out? Just this availability stuff and the mapm stuff. Okay, and then in the DB file, you should in theory be able to get rid of that. I'll leave these available for now. But that should be cool, I think. This is all booking related. Yep, and then I'm exploring something that doesn't exist. Well, why does list environment still exist? What's that code doing? Oh, it's down here. That's also doing a map, and that's the stuff I covered before. Okay. So let's just commit those. So we moved environment out of or into some file. Okay, that's not the thing I expected to see. That's better. So it's We'll just push upstream. Okay. So back to DB. What I might just do temporarily is rename this to booking and then see if I can steal a function from it in environment without creating horrible circular dependencies. So rename file to booking. Okay, I'll upset the cabal file, I think. So here we don't have DB anymore, we have booking. And then in main, we can't import DB, but we could import booking. I couldn't find much for booking. I forgot to rename it, didn't I? Yes, I did. Okay. Booking. Okay, and then back to here. And all of these things that said DB booking will need to become booking.booking. All right, let's go DB dot. We should be able to change that to say booking. Okay, one error left. Where is that error? It's in a file that doesn't exist. That's a little bit unexpected. Is it really an error, or is that the language server getting confused because I renamed the file and didn't notice? Let's find out. Static build. Okay, annoyingly there is no error. Maybe just restart. No. Okay, made the error go away. Okay, so we now have this file called booking, and is available. Where have I got is available? Somewhere in this file. Right. So what's it going to do? It is going to you give it a DB pool and an int, which you can change to int64, and then I can just take this from integral in these brackets. So you give it an ID and it returns a bunch of environment statuses. So what I could do is return the maybe booking, or the list of bookings. I'll return the list of bookings. This becomes purely related to booking logic. And then this deciding, this display available or booked belongs in the environment, I think. Oops. So I can say is available. I'll rename this in a second, but it's going to return a list of whatever these things are. These bookings, I think. It returns a list of entity bookings. Why not? Okay. We don't really need to get a list back, but I'm going to look at it later. I'll try and get this working first. Okay, is available. I don't want to run like, I don't want to be called that. Let's call it bookings for, or maybe current bookings for environment. Catchy name, isn't it? I don't want to run it under, I don't want to pass in the database connection. I want to do the same trick of running it under appm, and then saying appm m, and I'm going to say that .io m. Okay, I'm not importing this, so let's import it. Now we're trying the wrong thing. So, well, two things actually. We're not passing the pool in anymore. I can't run get current time. I need to lift into IO. I don't need the dollar because I'm an argument. The pool I need to grab as well. So that comes from asks dbcon. Parallels go dbcon, so let's import. That's probably good enough. Okay. And I can run that. Do I need to lift that? Yes, I do. Okay, but I don't need to lift this for some reason. Maybe because there's some other error I'm not seeing. It feels weird that it's not asking me to lift this. Okay. So where do we have errors? So this end with status helper, I'm just going to comment out for a second. I think, yeah, let's comment that out. Okay, and then the other error is up here. Oh, it's now noticed. Okay, cool. So I think I should fix it. Okay. So we get current time, we get database connection, and then we find all the bookings with that n by d set between these times. Okay. Then in environment, what I think I can do is say is available. And what's this going to do? It needs the ID. And we'll just run it. We'll just run everything under appm because it's easier. And it's going to return a bool. Not a pool, a bool, I think. And this we don't actually care about it because we're not going to do any IO directly in here. We're going to rely on the function we call to put the constraint on m to be monoleo. So is available. It's got an ID. So now we can say bookings come from whatever this function is called. I need to export this function as well. Current bookings for environment. And that takes the ID. Okay, so it's available. So we got bookings, and then we say it's not going to return a bool, so it's going to return an environment status. And I'll just find up here. Actually, I can go and copy that out of the DAO. So environment status. Wow, I need this stuff as well because we JSONify it. Okay. Don't need the from JSON, I don't think. We just need a to JSON in this case. Okay, so we can say pure and case. It's not case, it's if null bookings, I think it was. Then, so there are no bookings, then it's available. Else booked. Okay, and then just add the import. And then in theory, we can put this code back in. I've got some errors I'm going to need to deal with. Why is it doing this to me? Okay, so here we're saying just env. Okay, so we don't want to return env in this case. I'm going to create a new type, which is, so we have our new environment, and then we'll create an environment with status. It's going to have data type, it's going to have more than one field. Environment with status. I don't want to keep scrolling as I'm typing. That's quite disconcerting. It's really quite weird. So the environment status is environment with status. Doing it again. Wow, what's causing that? What fields do we have in here? So we're going to have ID, which is a, and I can make it in 64. I wonder if we can make it a better type. I don't know what's happening to my editor. That's really disconcerting. It's got a name, which is a string, and it's got a status. Okay. I'm just going to call it name. I can go back and write the sort of to JSON to deal with these, but for now, let's just see this. I'm so confused as to why it keeps scrolling. Okay. So get environment can now return a maybe environment with status. And here we can say environment, stop that, environment with status. I can't cope with this. I don't know what it's doing. Let me just make sure it's not. Okay, this is my biggest fear. terrible fear. So it cyclic dependency between booking and environment. Are we going to booking? Where are we importing environment and why? For environment ID. Okay, so this isn't going to work. 10 minutes of my allotted time as well. I think what I'll do is I'll just stop at this point and can pick this up next week and work out where to put this common code that looks at both booking and environment. I might put it somewhere different. Maybe we need different files for just the pure database stuff, like just this definition. I don't know, that's annoying. Yeah, because if I don't want to put them all in one module, ideally. But maybe I'm going to have to. I don't know. So we could have just the database definitions together, and then we could have all of these sort of handlers together. We'll see. But I'll look at that next week. So I guess for now, I'll just stop this point, knowing where the error is. Yeah, and then next week I'll look at maybe pulling. I'll work out where to put code that doesn't have a cyclic dependency. I guess that's the idea. Okay, cool. So thank you for watching along. And yeah, I guess hopefully see you next week. Goodbye.